Good evening. What do you mean we're late? You're late. Okay, after a damp squib of a performance on the Fylde coast, let's try and illuminate your bank holiday. Welcome to the Blue Monday podcast. Even that. Good evening. Right, let me just. There is nothing worse than the chill you get when you log on to StreamYard, which we use at 5 to 8, and all you see across your screen is device is not connected, device is not connected, device is not connected. And you see Joe, and Joe's there, he's waiting in his Blue Monday t-shirt. And you think, oh, just reboot, and you reboot, and you get a blue screen appear. Anyway, I got chills, they're multiplying, and I'm losing control. But luckily, Joe's got his Olivia Newton-John leather pants on to bring things back. Anyway, Joe, good evening. How are you, my birthday friend? Many, many happy returns for Sunday. Were you spoilt rotten?
Yeah, I had a good birthday. It was a 15-hour round trip from just outside Great Yarmouth to Fleetwood with a pickup at 5:10. I got picked up in the morning, got to Fleetwood about I don't know, about quarter to 11, 10 to 11, sort of straight into the ground. Watched the game, came out, back in the car in 5 minutes. On the way
Brilliant.
home, stopped for a KFC and got back about 8:10 for around 15 hours. But no, I'm glad I went. It wasn't the ending to the season we all hoped it would be, but I think like the players, I think the fans also were in sort of demob happy mode throughout the week, weren't we? And it sort of showed on and off the pitch.
Yeah, it certainly did. I think that's one of the reasons why it's you and I on this evening isn't because we've had to drop anyone else from the show because they overdid it last week and their performances may not be up to scratch this week. Enter whichever Ipswich Town player you want to on the end of that. So yeah, it's actually my birthday tomorrow. So I didn't get to go to Christchurch Park earlier, but I know 11,000 people did apparently, according to Mark Ashton. So if you were there this afternoon, please give us a message. Let us know what it was like and things like that. I've seen the photos and bits and pieces. I'd say it's actually my birthday tomorrow, 9th of May, everyone. So and here's a little tip for you. If you have a birthday on the 9th of May, so let's say how many people do we normally get watching, listening to this? Say 36,000 people as per normal are listening and watching this, then 100 people should have the same birthdays as us, shouldn't they? So if you're one of those 100 people that got a birthday on the 9th of May, get yourself a job with a company that its head office is in the Channel Islands, either Jersey or Guernsey, because they have a bank holiday every single 9th of May because it's Liberation Day from the Germans in World War II. So regardless of what day of the week it is, it's your birthday. It's your birthday off.
Should we get on with the football?
If your birthday's May the 10th, go to Sark because theirs is May the 10th. David, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your €5 super chat donation, as ever. Much appreciated. Thank you, Lee. Thank you for that, mate. It's because I've shaved the beard off, isn't it? I look 10 years younger. Yeah, shall we get on with the news? Was there any news today? There was a bit actually. Oh, this will please Rich, won't it? Transfer news. Shall we dedicate the majority of the show to transfer tittle tattle and rumours? Idris El Mazouni is interesting. Watford and Derby, was it that Phil TWTD reported on, Joe? Can you see A, that happening, B, whether it be a permanent, and C, are you surprised that they're the sort of clubs that he's been linked with?
I think I sort of heard a few little tidbits over the last week or so, and it does seem like he might be available for transfer. El Mazouni, despite having this sort of brilliant season on loan at Leyton Orient in League Two, I don't know. We're a player trading club, and maybe the club feel that they might be able to get rid of one and bring a fee in for him and go get him out. But I'd like to see. I'd like to see him get a chance here in pre-season. I'd like to see him maybe try and arrange a better loan for him next season, one in League One, see if he can step up because he looks a player. Like, there's not many 21-year-olds in in League One that are doing, sorry, in League Two, which are doing what he did. So it seems, I don't know, it seems a bit short-sighted to me, sort of trading away young players.
Yeah, well, we were sort of talking about this on the journey home. Is that if he wasn't our player and we were being linked with the League Two centre midfielder of the season, pretty much at the age of what he is, 23, 24, you think, oh, crikey, that's quite a decent progressive signing for an area of the pitch that's pretty important going into the Championship. But it'd be interesting to know what people think. Where do they think it's feasible that he's going to come back and play a part? Where is he on people's pecking order? If you think, the people that we know, we've got Morsey and Luongo, although we don't know what Luongo's situation is. Lee Evans, we've sort of spoken about here before, or Seb's certainly spoken about his thoughts on where he sees Lee Evans next year. You've got Kamara, who hasn't really played much at all this season. Obviously, Don Ball, who started yesterday in place of Morsey. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where. Notice I haven't mentioned anyone who was potentially being touted by the vast majority of fans as being a potential player of the season early in his Ipswich Town career. But you can't really see Harper coming back and making much of an impact, sadly. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where people see El Mazzuni fitting in. I think that was pretty much it in terms of transfer routes. Oh, obviously, in terms of other news, unfortunately, similar to the men's team, the women's team finished the season in second place. They did their job, but unfortunately, so did Watford, who finished top and go into the playoffs, don't they?
Yeah, it was just on goal difference, wasn't it? They lost to Watford, lost out to Watford. And I think they conceded a late goal when they played Watford a few weeks ago in a draw. So yeah, I'm sure the girls will be sort of proud of the season they've had, because I think they finished third last year and it's been a step up this year, but frustrated with how the season ended. But next year they know if they go out and they win the league, they will be promoted. So that's a big carrot there waiting for them. So it might not be the worst thing if Watford do end up out of this league. I think they were very, very unluckily relegated from the Women's Championship the year before. So they are obviously a good side, and we've pushed them all the way.
It does seem harsh, doesn't it, that you have such a long season and finish second, and even if you finish first, you still only go into a playoff, don't you? So it does seem to be a little bit restrictive in terms of how you can get promoted. Similar, I suppose, to a certain extent in the conference. Just a very quick side note mention to Paul Cook and Armando Dobra and Bailey Clements and Kieran Dyer, all part of the Chesterfield setup, who won their playoff yesterday and find themselves at Wembley next Saturday against Notts County. I see they were allowed a pitch invasion.
There was the two cracking games in the National League playoffs, weren't they?
They were mental, weren't they? In terms of injury time goals and equalisers and red cards, and they always seem to be crazy games, don't they, those playoff semi-finals.
I'd say I'm sure Paul Cook, they'll be going in there as underdogs against Notts County tomorrow, because Notts County did, I think, like 107 points in the league season, didn't they? So they put together a great season. But no, he's got them to there, and if you can get up above Notts County, you've done a brilliant job, haven't you? So we'll see how they get on there. It'll be good to see Dobra and Bailey Clements playing, hopefully at Wembley.
Yeah, exactly. And realistically, with the strength of Wrexham and Notts County, it seems to be a pretty understandable achievement to finish in the playoffs, and you can see what you can do once you're there. Right, okie doke. Let's move on. Let's move on to Fleetwood and Blackpool. As I say, if people want to let us know what they did in Blackpool for the weekend, if indeed they spent more than one night there, if you managed to find a karaoke bar in Blackpool, because I only seen like every single pub had a karaoke going on at some point, certainly on Saturday night. In terms of the lineups, here we go. So from our perspective, Christian Walton was in goal and had the captain's armband in place of what turned out to be an injured Sam Morsey. Just a slight niggle, nothing serious. Dominic Ball came in for Sam Morsey, and on the right back, Donasian came in for Harry Clark. Anything of any note there, Joe? I suppose, obviously, the Morsey thing, which we may have heard something about a day or so beforehand. John Ball, the obvious replacement. But in terms of Christian Watt, are you happy with goalkeepers being captains?
I'd have preferred an outfield player to be captain personally, but I guess it doesn't really matter, these things, does it? People should be captains on the pitch, whether they've got an armband or not. But no, I'm not a fan of the goalkeeper captain.
Okay, we just got a little note here from Josh. Harry Clark's still, like I say, banging the drum. He doesn't bang the drum. It's the other fella that bangs the drum. But yeah, giving the anti-Norwich chance. That'll be interesting. Yeah, as Neil says here, potentially not Clark, because I say we'll come to that in a little bit of time about his role in yesterday's match, but potentially a little bit hot-headed. In terms of Fleetwood, they lined up, as you can see on the screen. Apologies to those who are listening. Anything of any particular note there?
Obviously, Jack Marriott up front, wasn't it? The former Ipswich youth player. And
yeah,
one of the interesting things for me, I'm not sure anyone else is, but Colchester's, the former Colchester player, that Brendan Wiradu, who was, was a holding midfield player at Colchester. It's almost like a box-to-box midfield player. Was playing centre-back for them yesterday and played well as well. I thought he did really well.
Got Pantomime Bellend, Sean Rooney there was a little bit subdued at right back.
Well, straight from the kickoff, the Pantomime Bellend, when Wolfie knocked the ball forward, George Hurst just ran inside and he just cynically just tripped him up, like totally deliberately. But the ref spotted it straight away and gave us a free kick. But that must have been within 3 seconds of the game starting. He was already just trying to kick someone and get away with it. Sort of player that should be at Accrington.
Yeah, hair-pulling Jaden, alongside Harry Pell, that was. Hair-pulling Jaden Stockley was suspended, and Toto Nsiala, crowd-baiting, crowd-arguing Toto Nsiala, not even in Fleetwood's squad.
He was there, though. He was chatting to a couple of Ipswich fans in the crowd at half-time, and a few of the players at the end of the game before he went over and did part of their lap of honour, appreciations, whatever they're called these days.
That. Yeah. Okie doke. So, in terms of the match itself, after the first couple of minutes, there was a slight ripple going through the crowd as Port Vale scored what turned out to be pretty uneventful, but it didn't really matter too much, did it? At the end of the day, the goal, it gave us all a little bit of hope for a few minutes. But then there was a few mistakes started creeping, didn't they? We had a majority of the play in the first half. But whatever chances that went Fleetwood's way were predominantly from our mistakes, weren't they, Joe? Donasian had a bit of a dodgy game. He sold Walton short, I think, at one point. Walton sort of saved it with his shoulder stroke face for a one-on-one.
There was a few we were sloppy. And it wasn't like one player was sloppy. Donasian was sloppy. Wolfie was sloppy. Don Ball was sloppy. Wes Burns dropped back into defence and was giving the ball away. Leif Davis gave it away a couple of times. Literally every player was just in our half, whether it's because they were executing a press against us or whether we just weren't quite at it or a combination of the both. We were just sloppy on the ball. But yet we still created some decent chances in that half. We still opened up and worked some good positions.
Yeah, we did. But and to be fair to them, there was a lot of blocks, weren't there? A lot of blocked shots from, whether it be Broadhead, whether it be
Chaplin on his own had 5 shots blocked.
Yeah, and I think we got to like the end of the first half. I think we'd had 10 or 12 shots, none of which had been recorded as being on target. But don't think it actually includes the block ones either, does it? In terms of Morsey, we can chat about it a bit later on, because we'll go through the team as a whole and the replacements performances within that. But then Hurst goes off pretty early doors after about quarter of an hour, 16, 17 minutes, with what we think was a calf injury. But then even before then, I think, Joe, you say about maybe the defence being at fault and being a little bit shaky and giving the ball away a fair bit. But I think, helping out Joe here while he does a bit of remote babysitting, Hurst himself was a little bit, he wasn't his normal up tempo, in your face self. He would seem to be playing a little bit 80% sort of thing. But whether that was to do with the fact he was potentially carrying a little bit of a niggle, and then it transpires that manifested itself around about the 17th minute mark when he had to go off injured, and Ladapa came on, which is obviously about an hour or so sooner than he normally does come on. But he did all right. He got into the swing of things pretty sharpish. But as I say, it was pretty much blocked shots and crosses which weren't quite making their man. I think Ball's played a nice through ball, didn't he, to Broadhead, who brought it down well and blazed over. I think we can probably say that one was, Joe.
Yeah, there's a nice ball over the top. I think Wolfie played a ball over the top, which Wes Burns got onto, and it looked like it opened up for a shot, but rather than shoot, he sort of elected to try and cross to Chaplin at the back post and just sort of slightly overhit it. It was a very difficult ball, but we sort of worked. All the chances we worked were really nice chances, nice interplay down the sort of left-hand side, and balls being pulled back to decent spots on the edge of the box. But like you say, there was always someone blocking those. It did feel like we were just trying to work the ball to Connor Chaplin all the time to score in that first half, especially. But it just didn't quite. I don't know. We just weren't quite with it. But we could have been, if we were 2-0 up at half time. I don't think there could have been complaints because we were creating half decent chances, but just not doing enough. Not doing enough in general play to. Maybe in that sort of last 10 minutes before half time, we started to get on top, didn't we? And start to look like we were turning the screw, but then still just a bit sloppy with it.
Yeah, I think to Lee's point here about intensity, I think that is a fair point in terms of we just sort of lack the intensity. There didn't seem to be, to my eyes, my untrained eye, just didn't seem to be quite the patterns that we always have seen in the last 2 or 3 months. They just didn't quite seem to be there for some reason, and whether that's to do with the lack of one particular person in the centre of midfield potentially, but possibly a little bit worrying as well if that is the case.
I think it's difficult though, because we can say we missed Morsey, and we obviously did, but in that performance yesterday, I don't know what you were like, but I went up there really relaxed, wasn't really worried. Obviously, I hoped we'd get 100 points, 100 goals, but I can't say there was a sort of burning desire in me to get there. It was just a case of, I hope we win. We should do. We've got a better team. It'd be nice to see us win, and there wasn't that sort of intensity
burning
from the
desire
crowd or anything from there. And like ultimately, these footballers are only human, and they have climbed their Everest last week, haven't they? They've got to the top. They've had the big release from that point on, and yeah, Morsey might have driven our standards up a bit more, but on the flip side, he may not have been able to, because the whole club was sort of there. It's not just the players; it's the management team as well. They were. I say they were all out celebrating last week. They've all achieved what they've wanted to do. I imagine they've been thinking about Fleetwood this week, but they've also probably been starting to think about their recruitment plans for the summer, for the championship, working out who's going to be there, working out which contracts are now going to need to be offered and not be offered. Ultimately, the season ended last week, in reality, didn't it, for what we wanted to achieve. You look at Burnley in the championship, they flying up there, look like they're going to break the championship points record, then they lose at home to QPR, lose there. It's just impossible to keep that standard up. And yeah, especially once we sort of hit Plymouth 1-0 down, then all of a sudden it was like, Plymouth are 2-1 up. And I think the crowd, not that it knocked the crowd, because I don't think there was a huge amount to knock out of it, to be fair, but it just, the sort of atmosphere went, but everyone was happy, everyone was enjoying it. Yeah. But there was I don't know, you just can't fake that intensity, can you?
It was a very relaxed atmosphere in the away end, wasn't it? It was, so even when the goals against us were going in, it was very much it is what it is. As you say, the job's done. It's mission accomplished. It's back to the delights of Blackpool this evening, sort of thing. Just a quick shout out to Gary. Gary, thank you very, very much for your donation there, for your reward award. And speaking of reward awards, into the second half, and the 100th goal of the season, Joe, came in the 50th minute. And it wasn't a bad one, was it?
No, it's just Donatian with a throw in straight to it, wasn't it? Just threw it into Ladapo in the box, who did what he does well, held the ball up, backed in, and just sort of spun and hit the shot. And it, from where I looked, it seemed to hit the bar, then down onto the post, and then the players were there for the rebound, and all of a sudden they went over to celebrate with Ladapo. It wasn't quite obvious straight away they had crossed the line from the side there, but no, brilliant goal and great to see. I think that's Ladapo's 21st goal of the season, at 22nd, 17 in the league.
Yeah,
a cracking record for a player that hasn't actually played that many minutes. He's actually him and Christian Walton are the only two players that have appeared in each one of the 46 league games for us this season, and he's been available all season. He's done a good job all season. He's got 21 goals. I think he's actually played more games than Christian Walton because he played a lot of the Papa John's Trophy games at the start of the season, where Hladkey's played most of those. So he is actually our most appearances this year, second top scorer, 21 goals. Great goal to get the 100th yesterday. So no,
Yeah, he's
well
come
done.
a long way from the sarcastic chanting of whatever Pizza Cup game it was he was getting from, you know, half a dozen teenagers in the North Stand for one of them. And certainly in terms of his performances, because he's, by virtue of Hurst's own role in the team, and he's been starting games, his performances coming off the bench have got much better, haven't they? So that's obviously something that he's been coached into doing to make an immediate impact, which he has done in all those games that he's had to come on in.
Yeah, I think that's 8 league goals off the bench as well now, which is the most in the Football League, or probably maybe including the Premier League. But no, 8 league goals off the bench is not to be sniffed at. I know things are changing now with the 5 subs, that every striker is coming on every game, so they're doing it. But no, he's done very well in that sort of in what has become, firstly, being available all through the start of the season when we only had him really up front, and that was the only option. And then in the second half of the season, playing, which has effectively become the second fiddle role to George Hurst, and still being fit, still being able to come on to games, still being able to affect games when he does come on.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point from Neil Hughes, saying that Ladapo is underrated by some of the fans. Is that he probably is, and as you've very eloquently put there, Joe, the reason he did have to pretty much carry the can for the first half of the season, certainly in terms of what was behind him. He didn't have the backup of Hurst has got the backup of Ladapo. Ladapo didn't have that backup in the first.
Well, we went out on transfer deadline day, didn't we? And we signed Ghassan Ahadmi, basically because we needed another striker. And I think almost everyone's forgotten he plays for us, haven't he? He's gone to Burton and not really done anything there.
Yeah, 100%. I'd say what Charlie D's just agreeing with Neil here, saying it'll be an important part of the squad next season. Well, maybe we'll come across that and speak about that in a little bit later, Charlie. So just in terms of going back to the game, Fleetwood got back into it, didn't they? Their goal was a scrappy sort of goal mouth, bit of hustle and tussle between Danassian and Wolfenden. Danassian tries to clear it and slams it against Marriott, and it rebounds into the net. I'd sort of forgot Marriott was. I knew he was playing, but I'd sort of forgotten he was playing, if you know what I mean. I knew his name was mentioned, but it hadn't really sort of twigged that he was on the pitch, to be honest with you. And then 10 minutes later, we go behind, which I think is probably that sort of goal that's going to annoy the coaching team in terms of a pretty standard corner flick on and knocking at the far post. May have been offside potentially. I think Walton seemed to be appealing that it was offside, but he could have well timed his run perfectly. But again, it didn't really seem to bother or affect the crowd too much. But then 74, Marcus Harness scores his first goal since Exeter away, unbelievably, in November.
Yep, but it was a move that we tried a few times, wasn't there? Where the ball ended up we sort of broke quite well, and it ended up with Wes Burns on the right hand side of the pitch. And like Nathan Broadhead and Leif Davies had in the first half, they, rather than sort of whip the ball in, they managed to pull the ball back to Chaplin, who dropped into a lovely sort of hole, nice position. And this time Chaplin had the shot, and it sort of seemed to be going wide, wasn't it? And it ends up being blocked and dropping back, and Harness is just able to sort of take a touch, adjust himself, and sort of swing a left foot at it. Maybe gets a slight deflection, but sharp from Harness in the box. And I thought he looked sharp when he came on yesterday as well, which is sort of good for him. And it looked like from that point on, the ball was straight at the goal. And by that point, Fleetwood had made sort of 2 or 3 changes. And I don't know who was coming on, but these guys that were coming on looked like they were sort of the under 16s coming on to play for them. They all look so young. Maybe because it was my birthday and I've turned another year older. I've continued into my mid 30s still. So it might have been that, but they just look so young, the players coming on for him. And I thought, well, come on, we've got to go and win this now.
In the meantime, if anyone wants to look up the dictionary definition of mid 30s, that help us, just stick it in the chat. Yeah, you're right, Joe, because there was a guy who was, the guy warming up down in our corner, one of their subs, and I was with Oscar, my boy, and we looked at him and said, he honestly looked like he was about 12 or 13 years old. I think he was I can't remember what number he was now, 12, 22, something like that. But yeah, he came on towards the end. I actually Googled him. He's about 23, but yeah, probably says something about us both. You're getting old when policemen and attacking midfielders for Fleetwood start looking young. Yeah, in terms of our own substitutions, Harry Clark had come on at this point and had a somewhat erratic and eventful few minutes on the pitch. Joe got booked after 85, which could arguably not have been given. But then after that, he made a bad pass, I think, back to Walton and sort of had to recover and fly back and chuck in a.
I think that was before. I think that was first.
Was it before that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But he'd already done well to not get booked or give away a penalty in that respect. It had to be a perfectly timed flying challenge to recover from that mistake. He got booked, and then 5 minutes later, he's lying on the floor and decides to swing a leg at the guy who's breaking away. I say in the 91st minute of the last game of the season, with nothing particularly riding on it. And it all went horribly wrong for him.
Yeah, it probably wasn't his finest 10 minutes of football, was it, for Harry?
Yeah,
he just, I think, I'd say that he was. It's almost like he'd been sent on to make something happen, and he was like trying too hard to make something happen. So when he gave the ball away, he flew back to make the tackle. The second one, I think he'd given it away again there, and went back and made a. It's one of those ones that, yeah, he probably did get the ball, but it was with such force that it was a foul. I thought maybe a yellow card was a bit harsh, but it was given, but then after that, he then popped up over on the left hand side and was going on a run, getting into the box on the left hand side, and I don't know, he was so keen to make something happen, and then when he gave the ball away, it's just like a tackle. You just cannot put that tackle in when you've already been booked. It is like rule 101 of defending. You go to ground at force when you've already been booked, even though that guy miscontrolled the ball and it went flying away. It is a nailed on yellow card, isn't it?
But especially, it's just in terms of the context of the match and in context of the season and in the context of the first game of next season. It just seems to be potentially the stupidest piece of football that we've played all season. It just seems to be completely contrary to what a Kieran McKenna footballer would.
I think it's our first red card of the season, is it, in the league? So. But it's just he's now given somebody else the opportunity to have the shirt at the start of next season, and if they play well in that first game, he might not come back into the team. So it's sort of, I'm sure he'll be more frustrated than anyone. It was a bit silly. He looked overexcited, didn't he?
Yeah,
kind.
Yeah, quite. Let's hope it's not turns out to be. Let's hope it doesn't turn out to be a typical Harry Clark.
I don't think he's had many in his career. I'll have a quick look, but I don't think he's sort of a player who's had a lot of red cards or anything like that. He's just we'll just write it off as a bad day at the office.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the performance and the result, that was that really. We head into the summer. Looking forward to championship. Looking forward to the championship. 98 points in the back pocket, 101 goals in the opposition net, and only 4 league defeats, which is a club record. And we're obviously still in the midst of a 19-match unbeaten run, so we can now sit back and watch the playoffs from a safe distance.
Yeah, that is the massive thing, isn't it? Because when you look at the teams now, it does look, and it always is, because ultimately it's 4 of the best 6 teams in the league, so it's always going to be tight. But God, they do look fearful, the playoffs this year.
They look tough. They do look tough. Yeah. So just for everyone's benefit, I think it's Peterborough, Sheffield Wednesday on Friday, and then Bolton, Barnsley on the Saturday, and then the reverse fixtures I think are potentially during the following week. In terms of individual awards, then, as you sort of referred to earlier, Joe, Connor Chaplin has got the joint Golden Boot Award with Clark Harris. I've got something here actually, which is
I didn't know if there was any tie breaks on this, but it seemed whatever tie breaks, I think Chaplin would win, if that makes sense. Like, less penalties, more assists, fewer minutes on the pitch.
Whatever. Yeah,
but ultimately, for me, I think the Golden Boot, you should have, I think if you win the Golden Boot, no, I actually agree splitting it, because I think, okay, Connor Chaplin scored 26 goals, but because he's got 3 more assists than Johnson Clark Harris, he wins it. Well, actually, no, the Golden Boot is about who scored the most goals, doesn't it? And I think it's fair that they both win it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so just for people who are watching the lists here, you may see some names that you recognise. But as you say, Joe, in terms of Freddie Ladapo's finished sixth in the league in terms of league goals. So he's finished level on goals with Michael Smith of Sheffield Wednesday. And as you say, for a guy who hasn't potentially played as many minutes as some of the others on that list, it's really is, and certainly from the role that he's been playing in the team, I think he's had a fantastic season. And they're just poking up in number 10 is Mr. Rak Saki from Charlton, who we may or may not see more of ourselves next season. That remains to be seen. And additionally, Christian Walton, he won the Golden Glove. He got 23 clean sheets from 46 league games, which my very rudimentary maths will tell me is a clean sheet every other match.
And it's interesting because earlier in the season, I was not criticising him so much, but just saying he hadn't been having a particularly good season. And I think he's got 12 clean sheets in the last 15 matches. So that's an incredible record. But in the first sort of 31 matches of the season, it's 11 clean sheets in 31 matches. And we did say we just need to ensure that he's making those big saves when it matters, turning sort of 6 or 7 out of 10 every week to 7 or 8 or even 9 out of 10 every week, and that's exactly what he's done. Some of the goals he's sort of prevented, that Bolton saving that penalty at a big moment, and not just saving the penalty, just before the penalty was awarded, he made a fantastic save which would have counted, but because that didn't go there, but that didn't go in, they then got the penalty which he then saved as well. Cambridge, he made the penalty save. Derby made big saves at big times, and he's just become the keeper he was last year, which is sort of what we were sort of crying out for all season when we saw Michael Cooper and you see all these goals prevented stats, and Christian Walton at one point on the Opta analyst was on the second page of it, and now you look at his sort of fourth in the league, and that's what you need. You needed your keeper to step up for you at the big moments, and he has done. He's been fantastic the last 3 months, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And as Lee's pointed out here, it's crazy to think if we just lost one of those games in that amazing run that we would have missed out. So yeah, it just goes to show, those. I don't feel too sorry for Sheffield Wednesday, but when you start looking at some of the figures and the points that those guys have acquired, and you're finishing third and potentially aren't even going to get to Wembley, let alone get promoted. It's been a hell of a tussle. I'm just thankful that we finished 2 out of 3, and then I say we can just sit back and watch the chaos of the playoffs unfold.
Yeah, it's been a ridiculous season at the top. The standards set by Plymouth, us, and Sheffield Wednesday are incredible, really. And I say 96 points to come third in the table, and as was it Lee that said there, you just lose one of those games and you don't make it. You draw 2 out of, rather than sort of win 12 out of 14, you win 10. You draw 4 rather than win whatever it is, and Sheffield Wednesday beat you to it, and God, it is. I'd say we've done incredible to get over the line, and let's say you look at Plymouth, 101 points in that same season, and the way they've just bounced back as well deserves tremendous credit. Let's say anyone finishing above this season has had a bloody good season.
Yeah, absolutely, fair play. So in terms of there's no next game to talk about, so we're obviously dealing with a little bit of scraps in terms of regarding things to talk about now. We're into the close season, but some of the guys in the chat have been putting some bits and pieces in there about squad rebuilding or reconfiguration, if you want to call it that. Ashton, as expected, was interviewed in today, I think, at the Christchurch Park and has told Phil TWTD that obviously, as we would expect, that things have already started. But in terms of getting your thoughts and your players, as people have put their names here. Apparently, JG says we're interested. Joe, your turn on the pronunciation. The player of
Junior Shamadou.
Guy got into the team of the season at Cole U.
It's a young player of the year in League Two as well.
Yeah, he's a fullback, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's played left back a bit, but he's right-footed and generally plays on the right.
Oh, right. Interesting. Well, that's funny enough because Romeo here said, in terms of what we're saying about Harry Clark potentially missing out the first game of the season, he's got Connor Bradley on loan right back for the first game of the season potentially. I suppose that's quite interesting what will happen. I know Donasian has signed a new contract, didn't he, recently, or got extended contract relatively recently, but what they'll do in and around the team. Have you got any thoughts of the type of personnel rather than, maybe not the actual person itself, Joe, but the type of personnel, the sort of stature of player that would be looking to acquire?
Yeah, I don't think there's any. I think the fans are probably going to need to get used to the fact that the club is probably going to be quite ruthless with players that they like. There's not going to be probably someone like a Luke Chambers who plays 400 games for the club, or players that play here for years and years, because I think the club is just moving at such a pace that as soon as they're not good enough, they're going to be sort of cast aside, and we're always going to be looking to improve. Like you look at Janoy Donatian, for example, he's come in, he's been brilliant sort of last year, first half of this season. All of a sudden, we've got Harry Clark, £1 million, bang, he's ahead of you now. He's now the number one right back, and you're there. And yeah, they've given him another year's contract as an option, but I don't think for 1 second that doesn't mean that isn't just to protect his value. And if there's an opportunity to sign Junior Shamadou, and we've got 2 young players that are competing for that side, we're going to do it. There's sort of no way that goes from there, and we'll find a way to protect his value and sell Donatian and move him on. But I think the recruitment is going to be, well, we've heard how much money there is to spend previously when you've heard from Mark Steed and the guys of the Arizona Pension Fund. It's almost not an unlimited pot, because it needs to work as the club. But I don't think if there's a player that we find and they want 7 million for him, but the club think they can sort of buy him, turn him around and flip him for 25 in 2 years' time, I don't think that the big fee is going to be anything that puts us off. And when you look at the signings we did in January, obviously Massimo Luongo, he's a player that sort of defied all expectations in what he did in the team. But even at the end of that window, if you listen to the Hard Truth podcast with Darren McAnthony, and he talks about Jack Taylor a lot, and from what I gather, we put £1.7 million on the table for Jack Taylor. At the end of the window, when we'd already signed Massimo Luongo, we signed Marcus Harness for £600,000 in August. We signed Nathan Broadhead for 1.5 million in January to move ahead of him in the pecking order. Obviously, we've mentioned Harry Clark, Janoy Donatian, Freddie Ladapo's scoring goals at a good rate. Well, no, George Hurst, we think he's better than him, so we're going to go out and get George Hurst and put him ahead of him. And I think there's players like, you look at Wes Burns, for example, who's been superb the last 2 seasons. Like, his numbers are absolutely ridiculous for a player who spent a lot of the time at right wing back. But if there's a chance to get someone better, we're going to get someone better than him. And I think that probably goes for nearly everyone in the side. I'd even say something like Sam Morsey, for example, who's played in the Championship, and he's played at I think he's had a season at the top end of the Championship when he was at Middlesbrough. But if there's players that they think are younger, better, then they'll go out and get him, and it's up to him to try and fend them off and stay in the team. But no, I think it's going to be really, really ambitious recruitment. I think centre-backs probably very high up the list. When you see sort of Luke Wolfen and Cameron Burgess haven't really got a huge amount of experience in that side. Will both of them be able to step up? No.
Yeah.
Probably not. Will one of them be able to? You'd hope someone like Luke Wolfen and Cam, because he's a player with a ceiling that looks like it could be very high. But if he's not stepping up, I don't think they'll worry about, oh, it's nice to have an Ipswich boy in the team. Well, sorry, no, we'll get the best footballer that we can.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. As Lee's saying here, spot on. Neil's saying here that he's got Tyrese John Jules, also an experience. I'm going to go centre half for your abbreviation there, Neil. Forgive me if I'm wrong. David's got a wish list of a keeper, right back, centre midfielder, and a striker. We can probably look to tick off the striker, Joe. Do you reckon we'll be going all out to get George Hurst back, won't we? Regardless of what division, Leicester are in.
Well, like I say, you don't know what is best for us in that side. For example, with Leicester, them getting relegated might actually mean that the fee's smaller because they just want to get shot of him, because they need to try and bring some funds in to do a bit of trading. His contract might drop down, so it then means we're trying to take on a smaller contract than a bigger contract. But on the flip side, they might say, "Oh, actually, we want to use him," so they will drop down. But I think that we'll go for him hard. We went for him hard last summer and didn't get him. He's come in, he's done really well. I don't see why we wouldn't go for him now, just as hard this summer. And I'd say the harder bits are going to be the ones to cover certain bits. And sort of Tyrese John Jules has been mentioned there a bit, and it's a player like that can cover that number 9 role and the sort of attacking midfielder role. Because if you've got Freddie Ladapo, for example, he's going to stay or sell him. You want to get 2 top quality number 9s in the side, whether that's George Hurst and Freddie Ladapo, I don't know, but you can't carry 3 out and out number 9s in this squad, can you? There's just no way it works. So you need someone like Tyrese John Jules or someone of that playing profile who can play both as a number 9 and as one of the ones that sits in behind. So I can see why he's going to be quite popular.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Charlie D's saying that Leicester have got 7 players out of contract, not including Hurst. But we just don't know, do we? As we say, what we do know, what we can be pretty sure of, is that we will be doing our damnedest to try and sign him. He's got 7 goals in the time he's been here, and important goals in that time. You think of Bolton away, Barnsley away, 2 off the top of my head I can think of, which were not only top class goals but important goals at important times. Charlie D and Neil just having a quick chat on Hladky here. That's a difficult one, I suppose, Joe, from his perspective. He's part of a successful team, but not part of a successful starting 11. I suppose at the end of the day, it probably will be his decision what he wants to do from a professional career perspective, whether he wants to go and try and play games somewhere or whether he's happy playing second fiddle to a guy who's going to be a nailed on number 1.
Ultimately, I guess we retain his contract. He's got another year on it. I know he was earning sort of very good League One money when he signed. He was signed as a first choice keeper, was earning very good money. He's probably just had a promotion pay rise. So unless he's going to find another Championship club that want to take him on, or a very top end League One club to take him on and start him every week, it's like, what do you do? Do you take the pay cut and go there, or do you stay here and play second fiddle and hope, well, not hope, but think you might get your chance and be able to take it at that point? I don't know. It's a difficult one, but I think almost some of these promotion pay rises may price some people out of moves, because realistically, what level is Hladky going to go down to play? He is an excellent League Two goalkeeper, playing for the biggest payers in League Two in Salford, and we've blown the deal he was getting there out of the water. So where can he go? Unless maybe a Sheffield Wednesday or someone like that want him. But what has he proven at the top end of League One that he could go and play there? He hasn't really, has he?
No, absolutely. In terms of Michael's, good evening to you, good morning to you, Michael, good afternoon to you, Michael. What about Kamara? Could he take over from Morsey? I suppose we don't know really, do we? We haven't seen anything of him of any great length. I remember going down to Plymouth last season, I think it was, when he stood up to Morsey. I think it's probably one of the reasons why we signed it, is that he wasn't shirking away from the Sam Morsey challenge in the centre midfield. But interesting, it's an interesting signing at the time. Obviously, we were League One, hoping to get to the Championship. We now know we are a nailed on Championship club, aren't we? So we do our signings. We talked about Hadmi before. You can't see that Hadmi's going to be anywhere near the first team squad. He'll be potentially out on loan again, or out on loan for the rest of his Ipswich Town career. You've got Joe Pigott, who'll potentially be out again on loan in League One somewhere. You would have thought, just to sort of, if no one wants to buy him or get us a price that we're happy with.
Same for Raheem Harper.
Wage bill. Yeah, they signed long contracts, didn't they? Lee saying Kamara isn't as good as Morsey. Well, yeah, he obviously isn't, but he's got attributes, hasn't he, Joe? He's got actually in terms of athleticism and getting up and down the pitch.
I think it's probably been quite interesting in the last few weeks, since sort of Luongo's come into the side, that it might have redefined what the manager thinks he needs in a central midfielder for the club, because we've normally had like a ball player alongside Morsey and tried to sort of play that sort of pivot. But now we've turned into 2 sort of Rottweilers in the midfield who are both good on the ball, in fairness, at League One level. They can both pass, they can both spot a pass, they can play a through ball, they can beat a man when they need to, they can sort of break lines and drive into space. But I think, like I say, it's just my opinion, but I think that we might be looking more for sort of 2 combative players in there, especially when we go up against a 3 in the midfield. You need 2 players that just are very, very good physically, and that's what we've had. So I wonder whether that changes a profile. And I don't know, would you say Kamara is that role? I personally wouldn't. Yeah. From the limited bits I've seen of him, he's more sort of an attacking midfielder that can get up and down the pitch for me.
Yeah. James here reckons we're going to go for Scott Twine in the summer. Well, I can't imagine we'll be playing too much for Burnley in the Premier League, but then has he played much for Burnley in the Championship to say that he's a Championship player? I don't know really. Lee agrees you here, saying that Luongo's freed up Morsey's game. Yeah, he's been back to the old Morsey, hasn't he? Really, or sometimes even a Morsey that we hadn't potentially even seen.
Yeah, you just wonder how that level of performance from Morsey steps up, if that makes sense, because he's been like the driving force and the heartbeat of the team. But maybe next year, because he's played in the Championship before, but he's always just been a sort of more of a holding midfielder that can do a bit. It does next year. Does he go back to being the donkey, doing the guy doing the donkey work in the midfield to free up somebody else, if that makes sense? Because is he good enough technically on the ball to play that more freed role in the Championship, or do his skills translate better to being that sort of deeper guy that wins the ball, that works his absolute nuts off, that gets into the battles, that gets the ball to get us playing, that Luongo's done more of in the last few weeks?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, about Morsey? Because not this isn't disrespecting him at all. Actually, it's blowing smoke up his backside. But he goes onto the pitch every single match in League One, knowing he's the best player on that pitch, doesn't he? Pretty much. So quite how that translates when you go up to the Championship, knowing that you're coming against equally as good players, if not potentially better players. That's going to be an interesting dynamic in that team. Full stop, really, isn't it? Just a quick one here from Luca, who's coming in with some real transfer gossip and rumour that spoke to Leafs agent. Well, apparently, we looked at 147 players before choosing the Leaf. Was that Leafs? Did that make it Leafs' big break to get a transfer to Ipswich Town? It was between him and a Uruguayan left. Oh, wouldn't we have loved? I tell you what, a Uruguayan left back has got more red cards than Harry Clark written all over him, I think.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's interesting to see where we recruit from, because now we're a Championship club that does open a lot of leagues up. Because while the Brexit rules have changed, that you can't buy any player in Europe, certain leagues are now opened up, which apparently the Brazilian sort of top tier, the Argentinian top tier. So it'll be interesting. I know Mark Ashton's previously done. I think the French second division is also a league that you can recruit from. It's all to do with the league ranking, but we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick one here from Paul, who's having a few troubles. I'm gonna be kind to you here, Paul, and say I'm not going to ask why you might have Eva Longoria as a predictive text word in your phone of choice rather than Luongo. But saying here that he's absolute quality, but obviously 30 years old. And I suppose as well, I don't know what his situation is in terms of what his life plans are. Is he looking to retire to the sunshine in Australia anytime soon? I don't know.
Well, it sounded like at the start of last season, he left Sheffield Wednesday to try and get to a Championship club to sort of make a late charge for the Australian World Cup squad, and then was planning to move back to Australia after that. I'm sure I read that somewhere, but
I thought I did.
It's he's now saying he wants to stay. Do we want to keep him? He's been superb, but we are very well stocked in that central midfield role, and it's going to be easier to, if we are going to recruit big, sort of try and bring in a couple of players. You can't just sign everybody and then say, oh, actually the ones we don't want to keep are these two, saying we're now going to sell them. You sort of have to work a little bit with what you've got, don't you, and look at the contract situations of all the players, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's right. And you are limited to squad sizes, and you don't want to be paying people who aren't in your squad money just to be sitting around and playing cup games either, do you?
Even if you're paying half their wages because you send them out on loan somewhere and things like that, it's still money that's coming out of the budget, and you're going to have to be very careful with that, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick one here for those guys who aren't, or those guys, girls, sorry, who aren't watching. Luca's back on saying that he reckons that Ashton is going to be looking abroad this summer. So, Luca, feel free to jump on when Rich is on, specifically when Rich is on, and throwing all sorts of transfer rumours his way, because he enjoys that. Ian, good evening to you. Help me out here. How have Darlington done this?
They were top of the league when Ian has been on previously, so hopefully they managed to get over the line. I think they're sort of Phoenix club.
Lee's going for a 12-month contract for Luongo. I suppose it's just a question of, there's going to have to be a thinning out of the squad. I know David put a question up earlier on about who would be letting go out of the current squad without throwing any sort of shade on them, as Joe was talking about Donassi and early. They've all done spectacularly well this season. They've got us promoted, but it will be an ever improving cycle of players, and you would have thought that the famous data dashboard will be up in full effect already. So just a quick one, well, before we start winding down, thank you very, very much, everyone, for jumping on and adding your comments as ever. I fully appreciate that. Started a little bit late, but we can blame someone else for that. And also, there hasn't been an awful lot to talk about because we've done the job. We've got to the championship, hurrah, and we've got no more games to talk about until we get to August. So in that light, just to let you guys know that we will be doing a pod of some description in terms of just a wrap up, an end of season wrap up, potentially some awards. We may well get the Telegram mob to help us out in that respect. In terms of plugs, bits and pieces, everything you need is at bluemondayitfc.co.uk. So on that, you've got links to the various platforms where we are. It'll have news on when the next pods are out. It's also got links to the Telegram group, which we've spoken about many times. Obviously, if you want your fix of town transfer tittle tattle, get onto Telegram. There's exclusives on there. Cricket chat, if you're that way inclined. Formula One chat, if you're that way inclined. Also, there's a link to the merch store where we currently have a 15% discount promotion, special discount. It was only going to be 10%, but because we got promoted, we decided to up it to 15%. So yeah, as I say, we've got keep your eyes and ears to the ground because, as I say, we've got another pod coming up. We don't quite know when the timings of it are going to be, but it'll be sort of an end of season special. We'll try and get as many of the guys on there as we can. Joe, have you got a giveaway? Have you arranged something for yourself? You've out of your own pocket, you've taken food from the mouths of your own children to give away something.
No, I'll make sure I'm reimbursed from the Blue Monday account. But
oh, you can put an expensive chit into to Rich. Okay.
No, I'm sure people have seen the no score draws, which used to be the Panini cheapskates. The basically terrible drawings of the Ipswich players have been put into a poster, and we've got one of those which will be given away in the Telegram group. So just another incentive to join what is a fantastic community there.
Perfect, great stuff. All right, well, as I say, thank you very much for everyone. Good evening to you. Oh my God, right. We'll just hang on a little bit more for Nat. Nat, good evening to you, mate. Good to hear from you. Good luck. Don't mean it in the playoffs. I say we'll all be watching, not from behind the sofa or
I'd be interested. Like I say, I've spoken to a few Sheffield Wednesday fans, and they still seem quite down on it. But you think, God, 96 points is an incredible season. Last year, through most of it, Darren Moore's got them playing some good stuff and picking up points, knowing how to win. And it's sort of, I don't know, it seems to sort of be unnoticed that this collapse from Sheffield Wednesday has seen them win their last 4 to bounce into the playoffs in a run of 4 games in a row. So I'd say they've been superb this year and deserve promotion. Really, it's going to be tough, but we'll see where they go. Like, I don't know. It's just, I wouldn't fancy going to Peterborough for that first leg of a playoffs though, because away from home they've got that ability just to bang 2 or 3 quick goals in, don't they? Because they've just got goal scorers in their team. But I think Sheffield Wednesday should be too strong. Sheffield Wednesday are the best team in the playoffs by a distance, aren't they? And whilst Barnsley have been playing well, I think it shouldn't be forgotten about how good a season Sheffield Wednesday have had.
Absolutely, and it's all about timing, isn't it? That forms the narrative. If they hadn't gone on that run, if they just plodded along at the rate that they've ended up at during the whole season, it's a good season. By virtue of having peaks and troughs at certain points of the season, it sort of sets the narrative of the whole season through sort of recency bias and stuff like that, doesn't it? But anyway, yeah, good luck to them and good luck to the other guys in the playoffs. We don't really mean it. We don't really care. So yeah, so thanks everyone, guys. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for sticking your comments in. As ever, if you can give us a thumbs up wherever you're watching, would be absolutely fantastic. Keep your eye out for whichever platform you get us on for the next pod. It'll be coming along very shortly. And in the meantime, see you later.